thank Alan for taking this on. And I actually introduced Alan to Ruby. He came to one of our Edmonton Learning to Code sessions, and he was doing Python before that. And he found a little bit more about Ruby, and he's really taken it on. So thanks a lot. So I think this is still understated, that software is the future. So in the news just before Christmas, GM closed a car plant in Oshawa. They've been there over 100 years, and it was McLaughlin had it before, which was McLaughlin Buick. If you go out to the museum in Wetaskiwin, you'll see a McLaughlin Buick. GM owned it for 100 years. Now they're closing it, laying off 3,000 people, and they estimate that it's about a 9-to-1 ratio. So that's like 27,000 jobs lost. Like this is a huge thing. In the fine print, though, they're actually hiring software people. Okay, so they already have 450 GM, this is just GM, at their Markham Technology Center, and they're hiring another 500. So I'm kind of a prove it person, so I went to their website, and sure enough, they are hiring there. All of these are software jobs. So I'm not exactly sure. The middle one is very specialized, like very automotive specialized, but the other ones, so yes, this is in fact true. 7 of the 10 largest market cap stocks in the world are software. Like this is shows you really our really how our whole economy is oriented toward this. So you probably know all of these. Alphabet is Google, Microsoft, of course, Amazon, which has a huge software component, of course. Tencent, which we don't hear too much about here, but it is largely a software company. And so there's just 3. Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett. And the other 2 are banks. Largest banks in the world, I believe, JP Morgan, Chase, and Bank of America. So, yeah. I think about it like this, is that software is actually, it's like fossil fuel. So everything in this room has an element of fossil fuels to it. So, you think about strawberries or something, you go get them at your grocery store, right? Well, there's fossil fuel in the fertilizer for that, in the pesticides, operate the farm equipment, bring all the workers to the farm, etc., etc., etc. Actually, software is the same. So the farm uses software. All the transportation companies use software. It's all tied into the logistics of it. The grocery store, there's now e-shopping, all that. So I think about software as just, it's like a fossil fuel. It's everywhere. And it's really just getting started, okay? Because if you look at the future and think seriously about the future, self-driving cars, it's already in the software. So if you buy a Tesla in Canada, your car has self-driving software. It's not enabled because our laws don't allow it right now, but it can drive itself. The hardware is in it. So those things are coming. Full-on robots. We're seeing them now, and they're starting to replace workers. Automated semi-trucks, this is in the news all the time. So apparently that's the largest employer of men is driving. and this is starting to be automated. So I think in the US it's either 9 million or 20 million jobs are driving. And a drone delivery, so already happening, so it's already done. I think that really we're just missing a bit of infrastructure. If we all had a landing pad on our houses and it was kind of set up a little bit better, we'd be doing the drone delivery. There's AI-based commerce, blockchain applications, so that may replace the stock market, may change how all that's done. AI is used a lot in media and animation now, so it's just on and on it goes. So if you really just think about the future and software's place in it, it's just massive. It's just right there. That is the future. So locally, we had a presentation from Computronics. They visited us at Edmonton Learning to Code. They hired 35 people last year. I think they have about 200 people. They have a beautiful new building out in the Northeast. 35 hires last year, 30 of them were developers, okay? And they plan to hire 200 more in the next 4 years. And they talked a lot about, just trying to hire developers and stuff like that. So they have an office in Denver, 2% unemployment for developers. So that's like a week off, right? So it's like nothing. That's like people just going on a holiday before they get their next job. So it's super low and expensive. So when you look at boot camps, and he was talking about boot camps, the fellow from Computronics, he said, why would people spend, $20,000 on some boot camps? It's because of that hot job market, and he's in HR. He's trying to hire these people every day. So yeah. So that's where boot camps come from, and since 2012, boot camps have grown 10 times. So this is like internet levels of growth. This is like a massive growth rate. And again, I'm skeptical, so I'm always like checking to see if that's true. Is it still growing the same amount? And yes, so I've been watching this. So look at the growth from 2016 to 2017. It's like, it's still maintaining that growth rate. Like it's something that's really needed, okay? And if you look at that number, about 23,000 graduates in 2017, I don't have the 2018 numbers yet, but that's about a third of the traditional computing education market, okay? So that's probably about 60,000 people. And when you think of that in the scope of the whole economy and where software is everywhere, I actually think that's small. Like that's actually a small amount of people. When you think of, these massive companies and software being in everything, it's actually not a lot of people. The investment, this is pretty typical, is about 11,000, whatever your currency is, but this is US numbers, $11,000, about 14 weeks, and full time. So that's kind of a typical boot camp. That's what one of these courses are like. So why do people go to these? It's because they emphasize practical knowledge. Okay, so it's maybe the best place to get practical knowledge on computing. So there's about an 80% success rate, so that's averaged across all schools, all markets. So if you go to like a really hot market, New York City, San Francisco or something, the rates will be really high. They'll be like 95%, something like that. But kind of the broad averages is this is kind of a successful formula. And companies are changing too. So even places like Apple, Google, IBM, they hire people without degrees now, so they're interested in people from boot camps. And as I said, the unemployment rate is really low for developers. Sometimes people think it's expensive, but it really, for people going to these things, if you look at it, it isn't really that expensive because tuition is only part of the expansion of the equation. If you look at going to school for 3 months versus 2 years or 4 years, and start thinking about what your lost wages are from that, and being out in the market. So even if you work part-time somewhere or something like that, you actually find out the boot camp is cheaper. So if it's successful, if you actually do the numbers, boot camps are actually really cost effective, and so that's also a factor in the growth of them. So this is a Ruby meetup. Why do we choose Ruby? So it really isn't a matter of kind of going and seeing, what do we think the best, or what's the future like. So these are the languages taught in boot camps. And up until last year, Ruby on Rails was the most popular, okay? It's been supplanted by full stack JavaScript, okay? But it's still in there. And actually, the Ruby on Rails graduates are more successful. They're most likely to get jobs still, so. But the reason that we chose it is actually kind of a long process. So private vocational schools, they're actually regulated in Alberta. So it's governed by the Private Vocational Training Act. And so there's a lot of requirements that go into it. But one of them is that you have to survey employers and identify a job market for graduates. And so that's where I met kind of some of you. And one of the keys is you have to have something that's appropriate for the current job market. Okay, so it's not the future. Okay, so it's something where someone can graduate and get a job now. And that's really why a script language like Ruby is a good fit. Now, you also have to understand our target market. So our target market is smaller companies and agencies who are more flexible in hiring. They're more innovative, and it's what I think of as really a software company, okay, and the fun places to work as a technology company. So they're interested in hiring people from boot camps or trained in other ways. So they see new programmers as an opportunity. And in Alberta, they mainly focus on business productivity. So this is actually a breakdown of Alberta technology companies. And you can see, so entertainment, you see that in the news all the time. It's in there. It's like 5% of technology companies are actually like entertainment, okay? But the vast bulk of it is business productivity. So when you think about Ruby on Rails, that's what it's really designed for. And you start to see that why that fits into Alberta. And I don't have this statistic, but going back to what I said earlier about software being in everything, of technology companies, I'm going to guess at the number. It was like 63% or something like that actually have a software as a service component, and you kind of go, wow, like that seems, can that be right? When you think about, software being in everything, it actually makes sense. So most technology companies, the majority, they have a software component. And yeah, that's why Ruby on Rails is a good fit. And this is just a breakdown of that business productivity market. And you can see that operations, planning, project management, automation, analytics, things like that. That's where most of the applications are, most of the companies are. Okay, when I first started this, I thought, okay, it's going to be easy. We'll just see what the most popular platforms are in Alberta, Microsoft and Java, and we'll base a boot camp on that. So I looked at other boot camps, and I could only find one that was Microsoft based at the time, and I thought, that's interesting. Well, Alberta must be different. Okay. However, what I learned is that those platforms are for the corporate market, really. They will often only hire people with degrees and diplomas. They have more money to spend, so they will hire experienced developers. Okay? So from the perspective of a student taking a boot camp, it's not a good platform. Okay? And in Alberta especially, you'd be competing against a lot of other experienced developers, right? So that's why the target market was chosen, because it's actually a good place to get a start as a programmer. Okay, so once we identified that, we talked to people informally, designed a first curriculum, and then we used 2 questionnaires, vetting that with employers. Okay, so what we tried to identify is the skills that people should have to be able to work, to fit into a workplace. And it's similar to what you'll find from other boot camps, of course, right? And software companies, I've worked many places in the world, they look the same. Like when you walk into something, it's like, oh yeah, I know these people. He's from Germany, but I know what he's like. And yeah, so it is the same, but it's also tailored to the local market. So this is just a matrix. So there's 5 cells in the 5 areas in the matrix that of skills that we would like to cover. And those are broken down into categories. And then further on the right is some of the different ways that you could address it. So let's start with the back-end web application framework. So Ruby on Rails is what we in fact teach. Python and Django, it's used, it's around. Most people know they're very similar. So that's another way that you could go, right? Because we're, just based on the number of companies and so on, we chose Ruby on Rails, but some of these other ones were possible choices. And you can go all the way through. So databases, like what different choices could you make? What would you teach? And all the way through the technology stack. So we have back-end skills, front-end, mobile. Our boot camp's very light on mobile, but the world is kind of working in our direction anyways. And so that's our approach to mobile, is responsive web applications. And theory. So there's actually more theory in our program than most boot camps, and that came out of our survey. Like employers really wanted that, and then these workplace skills. So working with other people, some of the workplace tools, things like pair programming, review, how to just how to work in a group, super, super important. And a lot of places, they look at that first. Okay, so you need the technical skills, obviously, but they're sort of more concerned about the how's this person going to fit in, how are they going to work in our group. So the choice of platforms and technology, just going back to the first slide now, if you kind of do the combinations of all the different possible choices you could make, I think I did it once, and there's like kind of 700 combinations, okay? And there's 100 that are just dead easy. You could, I would expect to find that, So you can't teach a student in somebody else's technology stack. Okay, it's just impossible. There's too many combinations, right? But you can give them a good background, and as we all know, it's analogous, right? So they're still going to be able to fit into the workplace. But when you start doing the numbers, it's really impossible to train someone specifically for a individual workplace. Okay. So one of the ways that I have been trying to get funding for this is to, through the EI system and Alberta Advanced Education, they actually have programs for people that are unemployed. And in some cases, those can be free, okay? So I actually tried to do this. So I applied for a grant to have a free program for unemployed people. And part of that is I had to do an additional market survey. And so I had to find companies and identify them, and on more of a statistical basis, just to kind of prove that there was a market for this, and that these people would be successful. So I have developed a database now of companies and kind of what their technologies are, and just trying to connect a little better with employers. And we also looked at internships. So that was part of that program. Now it turned out we were unsuccessful in that grant, and it's mainly just because our competition was so excellent. So it's like you're going up against, University of Alberta, University of Calgary, who are now getting into this training business, not in computer programs necessarily. I don't believe there's another Bootcamp or anything like that. But so, we did just fine, but there's a lot of people wanting to start programs like that, and some of them are big and well established. So, so for 2019, in 2018 we were unable to attract enough students to launch our full-blown boot camp, and some of the challenges are instructors. So these people with 2% unemployment, hard to find, right? And you need there's a critical mass of students that you need to get that going. Another challenge, a lot of people are just unaware that we exist. and that it's an option. So we've run 6 free coding sessions, and they're kind of sequential, so they build on top of each other. And a lot of people I met at that course, they have just enrolled in another program or something like that, and they would have been candidates for the bootcamp. They just didn't know about it, and they just said, gee, I wish I would have known about this. I just signed up for another course. And it's like, okay, so, and that's a challenge. I mean, the established schools, they've been there for, 50 years, I don't really know, 100 years, University of Alberta probably. So most Alberta schools, they still go to traditional schools and they don't look at other options. The other kind of interesting thing is from our survey and getting through licensing, people told us that, like seriously, a person should have some programming background, even a small one, just to know whether they can do it before going into the boot camp. And so that became a prerequisite, like a required prerequisite as part of our application. So a lot of people don't have that. So that's an additional challenge. Now, most boot camps, in fact, have that, but it's recommended. It's not necessary. Okay, but through our licensing program and everything like that, it became necessary. Okay, so almost all boot camps will recommend that you do a course, like a home study course, do some programming in getting prepared for the boot camp. And so that was a bit of a challenge too. So what we're planning for 2019 is a small course aimed at, not aimed at job placement, so a much shorter course. So if you look at boot camps, they offer small courses. So I kind of looked at what they offered, and we're going to offer something similar. Web Application Essentials, and this is actually based on our series. This will be the 4th class that we've done, and it'll be based on our Edmonton Learning to Code series. And it's basically, you learn elementary Ruby, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, Sinatra-based survey, probably a CSS framework, and you make a small responsive app. So that's the idea. And likely it'll be like 3 hours at a time, so you kind of get a bit of the boot camp like experience, and that seems, Saturday morning seems to be a day that works. And we'll likely run that in May, because I believe that there are university students that would like to take a programming course. They're already in university, but they would like some more practical knowledge. And so that's our next project. And yeah, once again, I think I've kind of talked to about half of you, met half of you along the way. This is be starting my second year or 2.5 years almost, and working on this project. And I've learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to teaching more people about Ruby. So thanks a lot, Alan. And does anybody have any questions about boot camps or what we're doing in particular? Yeah.
I just wanted to comment about Alberta's market, because it's really interesting where a person has worked when it's talking about business productivity and looking at their hiring requirements. Like, you nailed it. And it's almost like 2 different worlds with this.
Thank you. Write that down. I nailed it.
No, it's really, because I've heard from other, some, just say my developer friends, they've mostly worked in corporations that are focused on business productivity, and they're like sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They're highly qualified with, shopping list of languages and experience, but they, but the company's expectation was just like basically you needed to be a software engineer for like 30 years, which, you know, maybe worked for, you know, it didn't really work in like the oil peak and that, but it's a really interesting mix in Edmonton, and that it's really more of a comment that you notice that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, these survey things, I mean, they really work. So they, so yeah, when you look at our curriculum and you compare it to other boot camps, you find similar things. It's like, yeah, well, you would find that out. And if they probably did their research too, and they did find that out, so yeah, it's, yeah, those things are true. Yeah.
I don't know if people here, I mean, I understand during certain economic times, most people wanted to work for the corporations, but I don't know what the trend is now, if they're trying to get more into the startup field, but it is a different mindset. Like, I know
Totally.
I ran
Yeah.
into a former colleague, and they were just telling me how they actually want to go back into oil and gas and that, and she was just saying, however, when she was on interviews, they were just like, well, you only have experience in this very small kind of field of software development, and it is more of the industrial Internet of Things. So we had a whole conversation about that, and
That's
partially why I'm here as well, because I realize I'm coming from a similar kind of box, and it's a bit of a deceitful box in a way, and I don't mean that in the sense of like they're doing something wrong, it's just that there's more action happening.
Yeah. So the student that goes to like a traditional school, most of them are looking for the corporate job. They're not in this room. They're like doing something else aimed at trying to find a corporate job. So yeah, it's a different mindset. This is a much better place for.
Can you give an example? Because you said you surveyed some of the companies who are looking for, you know, this type of bootcamp.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Ruby
Yeah.
employee.
Well, I'll say like Computronics. So they take people that are even self-taught. They've had their own apprenticeship program, which consists of, now I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure they were too, but it was basically somebody that they're familiar with, that this is a good work ethic, has no training in computing, sits down and learns their system and spends like 6 months, if that's what it takes, for them to learn their system. So, and they look for the person first, okay? So, very open-minded about.
So are these kind of, like in this divide, are these kind of companies have an aversion to, like, say, the corporate developer versus, or are they really open, or do they actually prefer the person who's kind of come from more of a startup?
Yeah, well, the thing with like a traditional education program, it's more theoretical based, okay, so it's not practically based, and so a lot of the people don't have the programming skills, the specific skills that fit into their workplace. So that's one of the things. So it's maybe mindset, but the thing I hear more is the practical skills. So theory, no problem. Like blow people away on the system. Like design an operating system, okay. They have a concept of that, but the specific skills that people are looking for their courses aren't oriented that way. So.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I do want to add a comment regarding what you said about like a lot of the schools. Like I know we talked about the University of Alberta and how like a lot of them are practically like theory oriented. Their computer science courses are very theory oriented. Like I don't want to make any sort of generalizations, but I did hear like a lot of the things that I did hear from the grapevine. A lot of people are complaining that there's not much like practical stuff. That might have changed. I haven't been to the curriculum, but with MAID on the other hand, at least in my experience, it had the opposite issue that the University of Alberta had. As soon as I got out, as soon as I got out, what I got was primarily practical stuff, Java, C#, and what I wanted, and all of the practical programming. Like we got a bit of design, we got a bit of like practical information, like how to create a project in like a team environment in a simulated context. But when I got out and I started to learn like computer science concepts, like it blew me out of the bit. It just blew me away as I was trying to search for a job. And I was just like, why the heck don't they like cover this as part of like the program that I went to at the time? And one thing that I thought, and another thing that I had thought of is like, and I did have some personal gripes in the program. Like for instance, like they barely touched on unit testing, and like they don't touch tests with like a lot of the companies, like corporate or startup or somewhere in between. They are all about like test-driven development. So I practically had to learn some of the stuff like on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a challenge, right? And so what we put in, like our theory aspects, actually all aspects, but let's say our theory aspects, it's kind of the greatest hits of theory, right? So we don't, we can't be comprehensive because our course is too short. But there's some real core things, and I've been a developer for 40 years now, so so I have a good idea myself about what's important and those kind of things. So yeah, it's a challenge to create a course that's really useful. Ben, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got, it's an uncomfortable question in Ruby Meetup.
Okay.
You went down your slides, so I'm going to go there.
Yeah, sure.
Are you already thinking about a timing transitioning away from Ruby to Rails and into like a JS full stack curriculum?
I think what we'll do is go again for government funding and try to offer a free program. So I'm hoping that there'll be another opportunity for that. So I'm gunning for that and working on the continuing education type of classes. So one possibility for the continuing education, because as you know, like you could do a very, very similar class with Node. And so I think that will probably be our first Node class, will be in the continuing education. And then, I don't know about the other part because I don't decide that, right? It's like how the market goes. So do you think that's like that those 47% of people that have switched to that they're in the right?
Difficult to know, because like you're going to see the stats, but there's locality in this thing that often gets neglected, right? Like what is Edmonton's our largest market can be looking for?
Yeah.
And you get weird social dynamics, like just having a very active meetup can like move a locality towards a certain language or technology, or one employer that uses it becomes a strong employer.
Yeah.
Then everyone else wants to be able to hire their devs who start using the same technologies. So like I think it's really tough to know, but it's impossible to ignore the fact that JS has a ton of speed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yep. Yeah, Claude.
No, I just have a comment because, like, what was saying over there, Ruby on Rails has been around for a longer time than Node.js, and I feel, just my personal opinion, that for new developers, learning something new might be more beneficial because that market for Ruby on Rails is kind of established, and a lot of people are in that environment working already. But as a new developer, you're going to learn something brand new that these old developers don't know. So the market might be a little better for you if you're learning something new. Just my opinion.
I feel the same way. Like a lot of times when there is something new, people will be adopting it.
Yeah.
And if somebody's, you know, it is another way to get in as a new new programmer, and so yeah, I mean it's true. So yep. All right.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Doug.